find how to resolve forces in the very first few videos somewhere on forces in equilibrium. You can understand that concept from there as well. Okay, question number 7. That's the last question that we're doing for now. Right? Yeah, question number 7. Let's try this. It says two particles P and Q of masses 2 kilograms and 0.25 kilograms respectively are connected by a light and extensible string that passes over a smooth fixed pulley. Particle P is on an inclined plane and at an angle of 30 degrees. Okay, so you can see that this angle is 30. We've got their masses given. 2 kilograms and 0.25 kilograms. Particle Q hangs below the pulley. 3 points A, B, and C on a line of greatest slope of the plane of AB is 0.8 meters. Okay, so you can see all of that information given in the diagram as well. It says particle P is released from rest. Particle P is released from rest at A. So it's released at the point A. Okay, with the string taut and slides down the plane. During the motion of P from A to C, Q does not reach the pulley. Okay, so when Q is moving upwards, it does not reach the pulley. Okay, when P goes from A to C, that's what they're saying. The part of the plane from A to B is rough. Okay, A to B is rough, with the coefficient of friction 0.3 between the plane and P. The part of the plane from B to C is smooth. There's no friction in that part of the plane. Find the acceleration of P between A and B. Okay, so what's the acceleration from A to B? A to B part is rough. We're talking about forces here. We have to find acceleration. Remember the connection between forces and acceleration? Newton's second law of motion, resultant force equals mass into acceleration. That's what we need to use here. So first of all, let's represent all the forces acting on the particle P. There's a downward force. That's weight of the object. That's 20 Newton. There's reaction perpendicular to the surface. There's tension away from P in this direction. And since this part of the plane is rough, when P goes from A to B, there's also going to be friction. Where does friction act? It opposes the motion of the object. So friction is also going to act in this direction. There's also friction here. These are the forces acting on the particle P. Okay, now what else? Let's think about the forces acting on the particle Q. They are 2.5 Newton, the weight of the object, and this tension. This is what you have for Q. Now, you just apply Newton's second law of motion in both of the objects separately and see what that gives you. Resultant force equals mass into acceleration. Let's see what that gives us for Q and for P. In which direction is Q moving? Q is moving upwards. So upwards is positive for Q. In which direction is P moving? P is moving down the plane, so this direction is positive for P. Okay, what about Q? The forward direction is T, forward force is T, backward force is 2.5. That equals mass of Q, which is 0.25 into acceleration. That's one equation that we've got. Apply Newton's second law of motion in P as well. What about that? Forward force. Now we need to resolve weight for that. What are the components of weight? There's one component that's acting in this direction. There's another component acting in this direction. How do you find these two components? If this angle is 30 degrees, we know that this angle here is also going to be 30 degrees. This component therefore becomes 20 cos 30. The component that is adjacent to the angle, the component on the other side of the angle, that becomes 20 sine 30. And now we just apply Newton's second law of motion on this part as well. Now remember, there's no movement of the object perpendicular to the surface. So these forces are going to be equal. Reaction is going to be equal to 20 cos 30. So the value of R is 20 cos 30 because in this direction, the forces are supposed to be equal. R is supposed to be equal to this because there's no movement perpendicular to the surface. Along the surface, we've got friction, we've got tension, we've got 20 sine 30. These are the three forces that we've got. What's the forward force? 20 sine 30 because P is moving down the plane. Forward force is 20 sine 30. So we've got 20 sine 30 minus the backward forces. We've got friction and we've got tension. These are the two backward forces, friction and tension. This should equal mass of P, which is 2 kilograms into acceleration. That's another equation that we get. Now we solve these two equations simultaneously, and that should give us the value of acceleration. Sine 30 is 1/2, so that's 20/2 minus friction. Since the object is moving, friction is going to be at its maximum value. We can say friction equals mu times R minus T equals 2 times A. And now since we're looking for acceleration, we can eliminate T from the other equation to get 2.5 plus 0.25 times the acceleration. Put that in the first equation as well. We got everything that we need now. 20/2 is 10. This gets cancelled. 10 minus mu. What's the value of mu? Mu was 0.3. That's given in the question. Into reaction, we found that reaction is 20 cos 30. Minus T. T is 2.5 plus 0.25 times A equals 2 times A. And now I can find the value of acceleration from this. What do we get? 10 minus 0.3 into 20 cos 30. And that's giving me 3/√3 here. Minus 2.5 minus 0.25 times A equals 2A. That gives us 2.25 times A equal to 7.5 minus 3/√3. And that's good. That should give you the value for A. 7.5 minus 3/√3 divided by 2.25. And that's giving me 1.024. Acceleration turns out to be 1.024 meters per second square. If you want to round it off, that will be 1.02. And that's your final answer. Is that okay? That's the acceleration that we were looking for. We just applied Newton's second law of motion on both the objects one by one, and that's what we got from that. Okay? That's a standard application of Newton's second law of motion. That was part A. Now, part B says, hence find the speed of P at C. Speed of the particle at the point C now. Okay, now how do you figure this out? There are two parts of the journey. The particle started from A. It reached the point B first of all, and then it will go from B to C. Let's break this journey down into two parts. One part is from A to B, and the next part is from B to C. Right? These are the two parts of the journey. In both parts, the particle is moving down the plane. So we can take that direction as positive. What do we know about A to B part? The particle started from rest, I think. Yeah, it was released from rest at A. We know the initial velocity. Friction was constant, right? Yeah, so all forces are constant. That means acceleration is constant. So we can say initial velocity from A to B, that is equal to 0. It started from 0. What about acceleration? We just found that in the previous part. Acceleration for that part was 1.024. Let's use that value. We know displacement as well. From A to B, it's given to be 0.8 meters. This is the information that we've got about the first part of the journey from A to B. Now, what do we know from B to C? B to C part. Do we have any information about B to C part? We know that the displacement is 1.2 meters. Yes. Do we have anything else given? No. So that's the information that we've got about B to C part. And what are we looking for from B to C? The velocity at C will be the final velocity. That is what we want to find out. So V is what we are looking for, right? Velocity at the point C, that will be V. That's what we want to find out. Now, for this part of the journey, we need two other pieces of information. Now, how do you get them? First of all, you've got this part of the journey from A to B. B is common between these two parts of the journey, right? A to B and B to C. B is the point that's common between them. What we can do is we can find the final velocity from the first part of the journey. That will become the initial velocity for the second part of the journey. Let's find the final velocity from the first part. So let's find V from this. Which equation connects these four things? 2as equals v squared minus u squared. Let's see what we get from this. From the first equation, we get 2 into 1.024 equals v squared minus, I'm sorry, there was also s here. Into 0.8 equals v squared minus 0 squared. And that's going to give you the value for v. Let's see what this turns out to be. 2 into 1.024 into 0.8 and then square root of that. And that's giving me 32 over 25. That's 1.28. This is the speed or the velocity at the point B. This will become the initial speed for the second part of the journey. Here we know that the speed is 1.28 or the velocity is 1.28. Okay? Because B was the final point of the first part and it's the initial point of the second part from B to C. So we know the initial velocity is 1.28. What else? B to C part is smooth. It's a smooth plane. In smooth inclined planes, acceleration is given by 10 sine theta. In smooth inclined planes, acceleration of an object is given by 10 sine theta. When weight is the only force acting, in fact, no, I'm sorry, that's in this case, weight is not the only force acting. So we will have to actually calculate that again. If weight was the only force acting at this point, then the acceleration would be 10 sine theta, but we also have tension because the particle is still connected with the other particle, so it will not be 10 sine theta. We'll have to calculate it again. Okay, so now we need to calculate the acceleration from B to C part. How do you do that? Acceleration from B to C part. You'll have to think of all the forces acting on the particle when it comes here between B and C. What are the forces acting in this at this point? Now, perpendicular forces are the same as before. We've got reaction here. We've got 20 cos 30 here. But that's not really going to be required anymore because there's no friction. Since there's no friction, we don't really need to use reaction as such, okay? We can just use this part, forces acting in these directions, parallel to the plane. We would have to find the acceleration for this part of the journey again now. How do you do that from B to C part? How do you find the acceleration of this part of the journey again? Let me just copy this diagram here. You can annotate on the same diagram by annotating everything using a pencil. Don't use a pen. And then you can just erase what you did for the first part for the second part. All right, I can just copy it like this quickly. So I'll just do that. Okay, so this is the diagram that we had in this part. This is what we know. What are the forces? So when P reaches this point, for instance, when P reaches this point, what are the forces acting on the particle P? There's weight component acting in this direction, just like before. What was that? That was 20 sine 30. That is still acting here. 20 sine 30. There's tension acting in this direction. And that's it. These are the only two forces acting along the plane. Earlier, we also had friction, but there's no friction anymore. So these are the only forces acting. There's a component of weight acting down the plane, and there's tension acting up the plane. These are the forces acting on the particle P. What about Q? There's weight acting downwards, that's 2.5 Newton. And there's tension acting upwards. We can again use Newton's second law of motion to find acceleration for this part of the journey. We could use the whole system as well, right? Just use 20 sine 30 with 2.5 and find acceleration using the whole system. That will work. Or you can break it down into two parts and do it for Q and P separately. You could do any of the two. Now, let me just take it down a little. And let's first calculate the acceleration for this part of the journey. From B to C, let's calculate acceleration. We've got particle P and we've got particle Q. What are the forces acting on P? Forward force is 20 sine 30. Backward is P. That equals mass of P, which was 2 into A. Right? This gives you 10 minus T equals 2A. That's one equation. And from this, T equals 10 minus 2A. Apply Newton's second law of motion on Q as well. Q is moving upwards. Forward force is T. So we say T minus T minus 2.5, that equals mass of Q, which is 0.25 into acceleration. From this, we get T equal to 2.5 plus 0.25 times acceleration. And from this, what we can do is we can find the acceleration. That's 10 minus 2A equals 2.5 plus 0.25 times acceleration. And that will give you the value for A. Let's see what this turns out to be. 7.5 divided by 2.25. And that's giving me 10 over 3. Or 3.333. Is that okay? That's the acceleration in this part of the journey, in the second part, from B to C. Now that we know the acceleration in this part of the journey as well, we can just input that value here. We can say the acceleration in this part is 10 over 3. And now we can find the final velocity using these four things. Let's find the final velocity. We've got the acceleration. We've got the velocity at the point B. Which equation connects these four things? 2as equals v square minus u square. Let's use that equation and find the final velocity. From that, 2 into 10 over 3 into s, which is 1.2, equals v squared minus 1.28 squared. And that is going to give you the velocity at the point C. You can see what that turns out to be. 2 into 10 over 3 into 1.2 plus 1.28 squared, and then square root of that. That's giving me 3.105. That is the velocity of the particle at the point C, and that's what we were looking for, 3.105. And that is kind of tricky because you have to find acceleration in the second part again by using Newton's second law of motion again. But that's how you would do it. Make sense? No problems? Okay, good. Now let's look at the last part. It says find the time taken for B to travel from A to C. Now, what's the total time taken from A to C? Well, we've got everything now. We know everything about the A to B part of the journey and the B to C part of the journey. We could just use constant acceleration formulas in both parts separately. We know what's happening from A to B and we know what's happening from B to C. From A to B, initial velocity was 0. Acceleration was 1.024. Displacement was 0.8. And final velocity we found to be 1.28. So we got everything that we need for that. From B to C, we know displacement was 1.2. Initial velocity was 1.28. Acceleration was 10/3. And we also found the final velocity that was 3.105. So the only information that's missing in both parts is time. We can use v equals u plus 80 in both of them, because that does not involve any squares. So we won't have to solve any quadratic equations. Let's input values. 1.28 equals 0 plus 1.024 into t. That will give you one value for t from A to B. You can see what that is. From A to B. 1.28 divided by 1.024. That's giving me 5/4. That's 1.25 seconds for the first part of the journey. And then for the second part of the journey, 3.105, that equals 1.28 plus 10/3 into time. You get another time value from this for the second part of the journey. That gives you 3.105 minus 1.28 into 3 divided by 10. That's giving me 0.5475. What's the total time now? Just add these two values and you would get the total time taken. That's 1.25 plus 0.5475. And that gives you the final result. You can see what that turns out to be. That's 1.7975. You can round it off to 1.80. That's the total time taken from A to C. And that's what we were looking for. First one, a particle P travels in a straight line, starting at rest from a point O. The acceleration of P at time t seconds after leaving O is denoted by a meters per second squared. Acceleration का उसने formula आपको दिया हुआ है. Now, it starts from rest, so that's an important piece of information. O से उसने start किया rest से. अच्छा. ये दो equations दी हुई हैं. Find the velocity of P at time equals 4. Okay, acceleration दी है, आपको velocity find करनी है. क्या करते हैं velocity से acceleration में जाने के लिए? You have to integrate. Right? अब t equals 4 कौन सी equation में आ रहे हैं? ये first equation में आ रहे हैं. ठीक है. अब तो फिर डर लग रहा है तो please अभी आप ये नहीं देखें. Revise your notes. डर लग रहा है तो there's no reason to be watching this right now. We are doing the relatively difficult questions. आपको डर बढ़ जाएगा. This is just for those of you who are well prepared already and are looking for some tricky questions in the past papers. This is directed at them primarily. If you are afraid of the paper at this point, या फिर आपको लग रहा है तैयारी इतनी अच्छी नहीं है इस point पे, the better idea is go back and revise your notes. Notes सही तरह से revise करें properly. That's what you should be doing. Revise all the formulas. You should not be forgetting any formulas. That's important. Focus on that right now. Okay, this is for those who are very well prepared already and are looking for some of the trickier questions that they have in the recent past papers. So that's what I'm doing it for. Okay. Otherwise, ये आपको नहीं देखना चाहिए इस point पे. Revise your notes. That's better at this point. अच्छा, find the velocity of P at t equals 4. Yeah, t equals 4 के लिए कौन सी equation valid है? First वाली. Acceleration is 0.3 into t raised to power 1/2. Forget about paper one. It was difficult, yes. Everyone found it difficult. तो threshold low होगा इंशाल्लाह. अभी focus करें बाकी papers के ऊपर. वो threshold उसको कर लेगा handle. अच्छा, इसको इंटीग्रेट करें, वेलोसिटी आ जाएगी 0.3 remains as it is. T के पावर में 1 ऐड किया, 1/2 plus 1, that's 3/2 divided by 3/2. But remember, whenever we integrate, we have to have a plus c, unless we are inputting limits. Okay, sorry about that. इसका क्या हो गया? Okay, जब भी हम इंटीग्रेट करते हैं, we need to have a plus c, unless आप लिमिट्स इनपुट करें, यहाँ पे लिमिट्स इनपुट नहीं करते हैं, लिमिट्स हम इनपुट करते हैं डिस्प्लेसमेंट के लिए, यहाँ पे तो नहीं करना, ठीक है? ये आपके पास आ गया। अब c की वैल्यू कैसे आएगी? We are given that it starts from rest at point O. ओके, तो इसका मतलब है स्टार्टिंग में इनिशियल जो उसकी वेलोसिटी वो जीरो आएगी। जब इनिशियल वेलोसिटी जीरो है तो टाइम इक्वल जीरो पे आप कहेंगे वेलोसिटी जीरो है। ठीक है, लेट्स सिंपलीफाई दिस। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल 2 विल गो टू द न्यूमरेटर एंड इट विल बिकम 0.6/3। ये इवैल्यूएट कर लेते हैं। 0.6/3 is going to be 0.2. So we have let's confirm this, 0.1 and 0.2 आएगा। 0.2 into t raised to power 3/2 plus c। वो पॉइंट इनपुट कर दें, t equal 0 and v equal 0, उससे आपके पास आएगा c equal 0। ये शो करना जरूरी होएगा, आपने c को बस इग्नोर नहीं कर देना। c का आपने लिखना है कि c की वैल्यू 0 आती है, ठीक है? So what do we have? v equals 0.2 t raised to power 3/2। ये आपका वेलोसिटी का फंक्शन आ गया, इसमें t की वैल्यू इनपुट कर दें। t equals 4 इनपुट करें और अब देखें सब क्या वेलोसिटी मिलती है। v equals 0.2 into 4 raised to power 3/2. Evaluate this on a calculator and see what that gives you. Velocity मेरे पास आ जाती है 2 raised to power 3, 8 into 0.2, and that's 1.6. Velocity is 1.6 meters per second. That's what we were looking for in the first part. Let's look at part B now. It says it's given that there is no change in the velocity of v at t equals 4, and that the velocity of v at t equals 16 is 0.3 meters per second. Show that k equals 2.6 and find an expression in terms of t for the velocity of v for time between 4 and capital T। तो सेकंड पार्ट के लिए उसने वेलोसिटी की इक्वेशन मांगी आपसे। अच्छा, उसने कहा वेलोसिटी एकदम चेंज नहीं होती है। टाइम इक्वल्स 4 पे जो वेलोसिटी आपको फर्स्ट पार्ट से मिलती है वही सेकंड पार्ट में वेलोसिटी होनी चाहिए। सो दैट्स व्हाट वी आर गिवन। और टाइम इक्वल 16 के ऊपर उसने एक और हमें पॉइंट दे दिया कि उस पे उसकी वेलोसिटी 0.3 है। सबसे पहले हमें शो करना है कि k की वैल्यू 2.6 है। लेट्स डू दैट। यस, 4 टाइम इक्वल्स 4 के ऊपर वो आपकी बाउंड्री बन रही है ना, तो बाउंड्री पे उसने बता दिया कि टाइम इक्वल्स 4 के ऊपर जो वेलोसिटी है वो एकदम से चेंज नहीं होगी। एंड दैट्स व्हाट जनरली हैपेंस। बाउंड्री के ऊपर वेलोसिटी और डिस्प्लेसमेंट एकदम से चेंज नहीं हो रहे होते, एक्सेलरेशन चेंज हो रही होती है। वेलोसिटी सिर्फ बहुत रेयर केसेस में चेंज होती है। वो कब होती है? जब आपका कोई कोलिजन हो जाए आपकी, ठीक है, उस केस में आपकी वेलोसिटी चेंज होती है इंस्टेंटेनियसली, अदरवाइज नहीं होती है। अली, दिस पेपर इज सॉल्व्ड, लुक एट द डिस्क्रिप्शन। आप ये पेपर के इस वीडियो के डिस्क्रिप्शन देखें। डिस्क्रिप्शन में आपके पास एक प्लेलिस्ट होगी ईयरली पास्ट पेपर्स के नाम से। ईयरली पास्ट पेपर्स के नाम से प्लेलिस्ट है, उस प्लेलिस्ट में आपको वो पेपर मिल जाएगा। ये 2 पार्ट्स में हुआ होगा। इसका जो सेकंड पार्ट है उसमें आपको वो क्वेश्चन मिल जाएंगे मुश्किल वाले सारे, ठीक है? Have a look at that playlist, उसमें आपको मिल जाएगा। Okay, let's look at this. It's given that there is no change in. Okay, let's find this. Now we have the first part and the second part. Second part पे focus करते हैं अभी। A is equal to minus kt raised to power minus 3/2. Yeah, this is the equation that we have for time between 4 and capital T। 4 इसमें इंक्लूड नहीं किया हुआ उसने, इक्वालिटी का साइन नहीं है, एंड कैपिटल टी। ये आपके पास एक्सेलरेशन की इक्वेशन है। उसने कहा एक्सेलरेशन वेलोसिटी एकदम चेंज नहीं होती है। अब पहले तो वेलोसिटी का फंक्शन फाइंड कर लें। कैसे आएगा? इसको इंटीग्रेट करेंगे। माइनस के रिमेन्स एज इट इज, दैट्स अ कांस्टेंट। टी के पावर में 1 ऐड किया, माइनस 3/2 plus 1, दैट्स माइनस 1/2 डिवाइडेड बाय माइनस 1/2 प्लस सी। डू नॉट फॉरगेट प्लस सी हियर। लिमिट्स नहीं इनपुट करे तो प्लस सी हमेशा लगाना है, ठीक है? 2 पर जाएगा, ये बन जाएगा 2k into t raised to power minus 1/2 plus c. This is the velocity equation that we get from this. अब मसला ये है हमें k भी नहीं पता इसमें और c भी नहीं पता। इसके लिए उसने 2 पॉइंट्स बता दिए आपको, वो यूज करके हम k और c की वैल्यूज फिगर आउट कर लेंगे। क्या पॉइंट्स है? हमें पता है टाइम इक्वल्स 4 के ऊपर उसने कहा वेलोसिटी एकदम चेंज नहीं होती है, तो टाइम इक्वल्स 4 के ऊपर वेलोसिटी क्या होनी चाहिए जो हमने फर्स्ट पार्ट में फाइंड किया? v equals 1.6. Let's put that point here first of all. t equals 4 and v equals 1.6. Let's see what we get from that. 1.6 equals 2k into 4 raised to power minus 1 over 2 plus c. Now 4 raised to minus 1 over 2 ये डिनोमिनेटर में जाएगा, ये 2 बन जाएगा और ये 2 कैंसिल हो जाएंगे, आपके पास बचेगा k plus c equals 1.6. This is one equation that we're getting. Then what you do is you input the other point. उसने कहा t equals 16 के ऊपर जो velocity की value है that is 0.3. Let's put that and see what that gives you. V is 1.6. 1.6 equals 2k. No, sorry, 16, not 1.6. This is क्या कह रहे हैं यहाँ पे? Velocity की value क्या थी इसमें? 0.3. Sorry, yeah. Velocity is 0.3. 0.3 equals 2 into k into t, which is 16 raised to power minus 1 over 2 plus c. This is another equation that you're getting. 16 नीचे जाएगा डिनोमिनेटर में, 1 into 4 हो जाएगा. You're going to get 1 over 2k plus c equals 0.3. This is another equation that we're getting. इनको simultaneously solve कर लें, आपके पास c और k की values आ जाएंगे. ठीक है? c equals 0.3 minus 1 over 2k from here. From the other equation, we have 1.6 minus k. Equate both of them, we'll find the value of k from this. 1.6 minus k equals 0.3 minus half k. इसको solve करें, k की value आएगी. Let's do that. इसने prove करने के लिए कहा है, तो आपको पता फाइनल आंसर क्या आना चाहिए? 1.6 minus 0.3 multiplied by 2, and that's giving me 2.6. Is that correct? Yeah. So k की value 2.6 आ गई. इससे इसको इस equation में input करते हैं, वापस corresponding value for c आ जाएगी. The value of c therefore turns out to be c equals 1.6 minus 2.6 and c is minus 1. c की value भी आ गई. Once you have the values for k and c, now you can write down the equation. वो equation लिख दें, उसमें values input कर दें. v equals 2 into k. 2 into 2.6. What would that be? 5.2. 5.2 into t raised to power minus 1 over 2 plus c. C की value minus 1 है, so I have minus 1 here. This is what the equation should turn out to be. उसने कहा था find an expression in terms of t for this part. Okay? ये आपके पास इसका final result आ गया. That's what we were looking for. ठीक है, let's move on. Let's look at the next one now. Okay, given that p comes to instantaneous rest at t equals t, find the exact value of capital T. Instantaneous rest से क्या मतलब है? Velocity यहाँ पे 0 हो जाती है, right? तो velocity का function आपके पास आ चुका है. Velocity is 5.2 into t raised to power minus 1 over 2 minus 1. This is the velocity function. All you have to do is just put v equal to 0 here and see what that gives you. 0 equals 5.2 into t raised to power minus 1 over 2 minus 1. 1 goes to the other side and becomes 5.2 over t raised to power 1 over 2. And we have t raised to power 1 over 2 equal to 5.2. Square कर लें दोनों sides का. 5.2 का square करें, देखना आपके पास क्या आता है. 5.2 squared, that is giving me उसने exact value बताया यहाँ पे. Okay, this is giving me 27.04. That's the value of t that we're getting. This is exact, right? आगे और decimals नहीं है, तो पूरा आपने लिखना है exact. अब इसमें round off नहीं कर सकते. Round off नहीं कर सकते हम बिल्कुल. That's very important. Exact का मतलब है you have to give the complete result. Decimals में भी लिख सकते हैं इसमें because ये exact value ही आ रही है. या उसको fraction में लिखना चाहें तो fraction आपको calculator क्या दे रहा है? Calculator में आप करेंगे, आपको calculator देगा 676 over 25, and that's also fine. दोनों तरह लिख सकते हैं, ठीक है? क्योंकि ये decimals में भी लिखते हैं तो ये सिर्फ 2 decimal places तक आते हैं, आगे ये कोई round off नहीं करना पड़ता आपको, तो वो दोनों तरह लिख सकते हैं. This is going to be correct. Let's look at part D now. It says find the total distance traveled between t equals 0 and t equals t. अच्छा, t की वैल्यू क्या आ गई? 27.04. इस पूरे टाइम के अंदर आपने टोटल कितना डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल किया ये फिगर आउट करना है. Now how do you do that? Remember, आपको जर्नी को ब्रेक करना पड़ता है उन पॉइंट्स के ऊपर जब आपकी वेलोसिटी 0 होती है, राइट? अब फर्स्ट पार्ट में देखना सबसे पहले। फर्स्ट पार्ट में वेलोसिटी आपके पास क्या आ रही थी? वेलोसिटी का फंक्शन फर्स्ट पार्ट में दिस वाज द वेलोसिटी फंक्शन v = 0.2 into t⁻³ इसमें आप v की वैल्यू 0 इनपुट करेंगे तो उससे आपके पास t की वैल्यू 0 ही आएगी। सो इसका मतलब है फर्स्ट पार्ट में 0 से लेकर 4 तक तो कोई डायरेक्शन चेंज नहीं हो रही है, सो वी डोंट हैव टू वरी अबाउट दैट। 0 से 4 तक देयर इज नो डायरेक्ट चेंज इन डायरेक्शन। सेकंड में देख लें, इसमें कोई चेंज इन डायरेक्शन है? सेकंड में हमारे पास ये वेलोसिटी की इक्वेशन है, इसमें मैंने वेलोसिटी को 0 इनपुट किया था, इससे भी सिर्फ एक ही टाइम की वैल्यू आई है और वो क्या आई है? 27.04 और उस पे तो आपने एंड कर देना अपनी जर्नी को। तो देयर इज नो चेंज इन डायरेक्शन ड्यूरिंग मोशन, ओके, दैट वी हैव टू वरी अबाउट। देयर इज नो चेंज इन डायरेक्शन दैट वी हैव टू वरी अबाउट। सो ऑल यू हैव टू डू इज दोनों इक्वेशंस को अलग अलग इंटीग्रेट करें, उनमें लिमिट्स डाल दें और उसमें आपके पास आ जाएगा। Okay, Saif, let me go back to that after this, ठीक है? I'll come to that. ये मुझे complete कर लेने last part, इसके बाद मैं आपको समझाता हूँ। क्या कर रहे थे हम? या x velocity function दोनों आगे। First velocity function was 0.2 t⁻³ and the other velocity function was 5.2 into t⁻⁻⁻⁴ -1। ये आपके पास दो वेलोसिटी फंक्शन है, दोनों को इंटीग्रेट करें। पहले वाले दोनों के टाइम इंटरवल्स आपको पता है, अब निकाले हुए और उनमें वो लिमिट्स इनपुट कर दें। लेट्स सी व्हाट वी गेट फ्रॉम दिस। टाइम की वैल्यूज क्या इनपुट करनी है? पहले पार्ट में 0 से लेकर 4 तक, सेकंड पार्ट में 4 से लेकर 27.04 तक। लेट्स इंटीग्रेट इनपुट लिमिट्स। ये फर्स्ट डिस्प्लेसमेंट आ जाएगी आपके पास 0.2 into t⁵/5/2 divided by 5/2 and that gives you 2 ऊपर जाएगा 0.4 हो जाएगा, 0.4 divided by 5, that is going to be 0.08. So you have 0.08 into t⁵5/2. इसमें लिमिट्स इनपुट करनी है from 0 to 4. Let's input the limits. 0.08 into 4⁵5/2 minus 0.08 into 0⁵5/2. Okay, अच्छा, let's see what this turns out to be. 32 into 0.08, that is 2.56. ये फर्स्ट पार्ट की डिस्प्लेसमेंट आ गई, right? 2⁵5 is 32, 32, yeah, that should be correct. दूसरे पार्ट को इंटीग्रेट कर लें, देखें इसमें क्या आता है? 5.2 into t⁻⁻⁻² plus 1, that's 1/2 divided by 1/2 minus 1 का इंटीग्रल, 1 का इंटीग्रल विद रिस्पेक्ट टू t क्या आएगा? t। लिमिट्स इनपुट करनी है 4 से लेकर 27.04 तक। लिमिट्स इनपुट करके दिखाना जरूरी है, अदरवाइज आपको मार्क्स कट जाएंगे। पहले सिंपलीफाई कर लें इसको थोड़ा सा, 2 ऊपर चला जाएगा, इट्स गोइंग टू बिकम 10.4 t⁻1/2 minus t। Input the limits from 4 to 27.04. Okay, now what do we get when you do that? 10.4 into 27.04⁻1/2 minus 27.04. This is what you get when you input 27.04. Subtract from this the case when you input 4. That's going to be 10 into 4⁻1/2 minus 4. Evaluate this and see what this turns out to be. Okay. अच्छा, मैंने कुछ यहाँ पे मिस कर दिया। 10 into 4, ये 10.4 है, मुझे लेफ्ट पे डिफरेंट लिखा हुआ है, राइट पे डिफरेंट लिखा हुआ है। This should have been 10.4 here. ठीक है, इसको एवेल्युएट करते हैं, देखते हैं हमारे पास क्या आता है। सैफ, वेलोसिटी को इंटीग्रेट करके जब डिस्प्लेसमेंट निकालते हैं, वैसे तो प्लस ही होता है यहाँ पे। अगर आपने डिस्प्लेसमेंट की एक्सप्रेशन निकालनी होती कि डिस्प्लेसमेंट का फंक्शन क्या है, उसमें आपको प्लस ही डालना पड़ता है। अगर लिमिट्स आप इनपुट कर रहे हो और डिस्प्लेसमेंट फाइंड कर रहे हो, डिस्प्लेसमेंट की वैल्यू फाइंड कर रहे हो फ्रॉम वन पॉइंट टू द अदर, उसमें आप इसको सी कंसिडर करना जरूरी नहीं होता। ठीक है, लेट्स सी व्हाट दिस टर्न्स आउट टू बी। 10.4 into 27.04 raised to power 0.5, subtract from this 27.04। पहले वाले पार्ट का मेरे पास आ रहा है 67.67/25, 676/25, subtract from this the second part, that's 0.4 into 2 minus 4, and that's minus 16 over 5. ये evaluate करें, देखना बस क्या आता है, 676 divided by 25 plus 16 over 5, and that's giving me 30.24. ठीक है, तो total distance traveled आपको निकालना था. Total distance अब देख लें क्या आता है, इन दोनों को add कर लें. 2.56 plus 30.24. Let me just check the working again. I think I'm missing something. I'm just checking the final answer. पहला वाला 2.56 ये सही है. दूसरा वाला में कोई मसला लग रहा है. लिमिट्स इनपुट करते हुए हमने क्या किया है, 10.4. Let me just check my working again. Calculator पे क्या डाला है, 10.4 into 27.04 whole raised to power 0.5. Subtract from this 27.04. We have 10.4 into 2 minus 4. अच्छा, second मैंने गलत लिख दिया यहाँ पे. This is 84 over 5. Okay, sorry. ये जो second आपके पास क्या आता है, 84 over 5. Okay, let's see what this gives us now. 676 divided by 25 minus 84 divided by 5, and that's going to be 10.24. You have total distance निकाल लें, दोनों को add कर लें, and that's going to give you the result. 2.56 plus 10.24. दोनों को add कर लें, तो आपके पास क्या आ जाता है, 12.8, and that's your final answer here. This is the total distance that we were looking for. That's the final result. Question number 4. A particle P travels in the positive direction along a straight line with constant acceleration. P travels a distance of 52 meters during the second. Okay, that means time equals 1 से लेकर time equals 2 तक. T की वैल्यू जब सेकंड सेकंड का मतलब है t equals 1 से लेकर t equals 2 तक उसने इतना डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल किया 52 meters. और फिर उसके बाद it travels a distance of 64 meters during the 4th second. Okay, 4th second means t equals 4 to, sorry, t equals 3 to t equals 4. इस इंटरवल में उसने 64 meters ट्रैवल किया. Acceleration is constant, so you have to keep that in mind. And now we need to find the initial speed and the acceleration of P. Initial speed का मतलब है जब time 0 है तब acceleration क्या है, तब speed क्या है वो figure out करनी है, और हमें acceleration figure out करनी है. Now let's try to visualize this in a way. Let's say we have a line like this. अब हुआ ये है कि उसने किसी पॉइंट पे स्टार्ट किया है, ठीक है. Let's say that starting point is t equals 0. t equals 0 पे उसने स्टार्ट किया. अब इस पे इसकी जो स्पीड होगी, let's say that's u meters per second, and now it's moving at constant acceleration in a straight line. So right side move करें, let's say, ठीक है. अब हमें ये पता है कि इसकी जो acceleration है that is constant. Okay, acceleration remains a. Let's call this a. Okay. अब time equals 1 होगा कहीं पे, और कहीं पे time equals 2 होगा, ठीक है. इस रीजन में उसने कितना डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल कर लिया, उसने ट्रैवल कर लिया 52 meters. फिर टाइम इक्वल्स 3 है, उसका हमें नहीं पता 2 से 3 तक क्या होता है, और हमें पता टाइम इक्वल्स 4 जब आता है तो तब वो क्या करता है, उस रीजन के अंदर वो ट्रैवल कर लेता है 64 meters. That is what is happening here. Okay, we need to find the value of u जब उसने जिस स्पीड पर उसने स्टार्ट किया and the acceleration. Now how do we think about this? अच्छा देखिए, उसने इंफॉर्मेशन थोड़ी सी ना डिफरेंट तरीके से दी हुई है. उसने हमें ये नहीं बताया कि इतने टाइम में उसने इतना ट्रैवल कर लिया, उसने हमें 1 सेकंड का बताया। सो टाइम इक्वल्स 1 से लेकर टाइम इक्वल्स 2 तक, इस इंटरवल में उसने कितना ट्रैवल किया है? 52 मीटर्स। तो हम t इक्वल्स 2 नहीं इनपुट कर सकते डायरेक्टली, हमें ये करना पड़ेगा, हमें एक दफा t इक्वल्स 2 की पे वैल्यू देखनी पड़ेगी, उसमें से माइनस करना पड़ेगा t इक्वल्स 1 पे कितना ट्रैवल किया, राइट? सो फॉर इंस्टेंस स्टार्ट से लेकर अगर हम देखते हैं, स्टार्ट से लेके हम देख सकते हैं कि उसने टाइम इक्वल्स 2 तक कितना ट्रैवल किया, उसमें से अगर हम माइनस कर दें उसने टाइम इक्वल्स 1 तक कितना ट्रैवल किया, तो वो हमारे पास 52 आना चाहिए। ऑलराइट, नाउ व्हाट इंफॉर्मेशन डू वी हैव? अगर हम ये पूरा रीजन देखते हैं, इनिशियल वेलोसिटी हमें पता है u है, और हमारे पास एक एक्सेलरेशन है, ये दो चीजें हमने फाइंड करनी है। डिस्प्लेसमेंट हमें दी हुई है और टाइम दिया हुआ है। सो ये 4 वेरिएबल्स हैं, इनको कौन सी इक्वेशन कनेक्ट करती है? लेट्स थिंक अबाउट दैट फर्स्ट। S U A N T, that's S equals UT plus AT square. So that's the equation that we will be using. S equals UT plus half AT square. This is what I'm going to be using. Now, सबसे पहले let's make an equation using this first piece of information, जो 52 meters दिया हुआ है। हम कहते हैं कि अच्छा 2 seconds तक जो डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल किया उसमें से माइनस कर दें 1 सेकंड तक जो डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल किया, लेट्स कॉल दिस S1, डिस्टेंस 1। ये कैसे होएगा? ये फॉर्मूला यूज करते हैं, u इंटू टी, पहले 2 इनपुट कर दें, देखते हैं 2 सेकंड्स तक कितना हुआ, ut प्लस हाफ इंटू a इंटू टी स्क्वायर्ड, 2 सेकंड्स में इतना डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल हो गया, माइनस कर दें उसमें से 1 सेकंड तक वाला डिस्टेंस, दैट्स u इंटू 1 plus half into a into 1t square, a into 1 squared। ये आपका पहला डिस्टेंस है जो उसने दिया हुआ है, टाइम इक्वल्स 1 से टाइम इक्वल्स 2 तक। इसकी वैल्यू कितनी है? 52 meters। So what we do is we equate this to 52। This is one equation that we have। 2u plus 4 over 2, ये 2 हो जाएगा, plus 2a minus u minus half a। Okay, we could simplify this. We can just multiply the whole equation by 2 first of all. That's going to give us 104 equals, let's first simplify this। 52 equals u plus 2 minus 1 over 2 कितना आता है? 3 over 2 times a। अब 2 से multiply कर दें, that's going to give you 2u plus 3a equals 104। This is one equation that we have between u and a। All right, now let's find another equation between u and a using a similar idea। इसी तरह की इंफॉर्मेशन उसने दी हुई है हमें, टाइम इक्वल्स 3 से लेकर टाइम इक्वल्स 4 तक, उससे एक और इक्वेशन आ जाएगी हमारे पास। लेट्स फाइंड दैट इक्वेशन, वी हैव अ लॉट ऑफ स्पेस, दिस इज वन इक्वेशन। अब दूसरी इक्वेशन निकाल लेते हैं, जो सेकंड पीस ऑफ जो सेकंड आपके पास इंटरवल है 4th सेकंड वाला, उसके लिए भी हम यही करते हैं। टाइम 4 सेकंड्स तक आप डिस्प्लेसमेंट निकाल लें, राइट? 4 सेकंड तक डिस्प्लेसमेंट निकालें, उसमें से माइनस कर दें 3 seconds तक की displacement, and you get the remaining displacement, that is 64 meters। So let's do that using the same formula। u into 4 plus half into a into 4 squared, ये time equals 4 तक जो distance travel किया होगा उसमें से माइनस कर दें time equals 3 तक वाला distance, that's u into 3 plus half into a into 3 squared, and just evaluate what this turns out to be। Okay, this is going to give us 4u plus 16 over 2, that's 8a, minus 3u minus 9 over 2 times a। Now this displacement is equal to 64. You equate this to 64. Let's simplify this. 4u minus 3, that's u 8 minus 9 over 2. Let's evaluate that. 8 minus 9 divided by 2, that is 7 over 2. So that's u plus 7 over 2 times a, that equals 64. And from this we get, if we multiply by 2 to get rid of the fraction, we have 2u plus 7a equals 64. And this is another equation that we have. We can just solve these two equations simultaneously, and that is going to give us the values for u and a. Let's do that। 104 equals 2u plus 3a, and 64 equals 2u plus 7a। ये दो इक्वेशंस हैं, हम दोनों में से u को सब्जेक्ट बना लेते हैं, इनफैक्ट 2u को सब्जेक्ट बना लें, दोनों में 2u आ रहा है ना, you can say 2u equals 64 minus 7a, and in the other equation you can say 2u equals 104 minus 3a. Now since 2u is either equal to this or equal to this, and दोनों को equate कर देते हैं हम कहते हैं 104 minus 3a equals 64 minus 7a, and that gives us 4a equal to minus 40, right? लेकिन इसने लास्ट सेकंड में कितना ट्रैवल किया था? इसने लास्ट सेकंड में ट्रैवल किया था 64 meters, तो इसमें एक्सेलरेशन should be positive. यहाँ पे नेगेटिव कैसे आ रही है हमारी? Let's check that. U plus half a, this should be correct. Let's just check our equation. इसमें कोई मसला तो नहीं है, हमने equate करते हुए कोई मसला क्या? 104 is fine, or 64 equals 2u plus 7a. When we equated them, okay, so I did, no, that's okay. 64, 104 minus 3a, that is fine as well. And on this side we have 64 minus 7a. A comes here, that becomes 4a. यहाँ से हमारे पास a की value आती है. I'm having a lot of careless errors today for some reason. Let me just check the equations again. 52 equals u plus 1.5a, and 64 equals u plus, yeah, okay. So I multiplied by 2 here. Let me do that again here. यहाँ पे मैंने क्या किया है? Okay, sorry about this. So I multiplied by 2 here. मैंने 64 को 2 से multiply नहीं किया. This should have been 128 here. Okay. So now if we solve these two simultaneous equations, 2u plus 3a equal to 104, and 2u plus 7a equals 128. We can find the values for u and a from this. ठीक है. Now दोनों sides पे 2u आ रहा है, तो 2u को ये subject बना लेते हैं. उससे हमें क्या मिलेगा? 104 minus 3a and 128 minus 7a, and this turns out to be 104 3a equal to 128 minus 7a, right? Because 2u is either equal to this or equal to this. That means ये दोनों चीजें एक दूसरे के equal होने चाहिए. We get an equation from this. We can just solve this equation and find the value of a from this. 7a goes to the left side, that gives us 4a. On the right side we have 128 minus 104, that's 24, and the value of a turns out to be 6 from here. That's the acceleration that we were looking for. Okay, acceleration आ गई. अब क्या करें, इसको वापस input कर दें हम किसी equation में to find the value of a. इसमें से किसी भी equation में डाल दें. To find the value of u, let's input here 2u equals 104 minus 3 times 6, right? And that gives us 104 minus 18, which is 86, and u equals 43 meters per second. That is what we were looking for here. Okay, so we have the value of a and u. We were looking for the initial speed. We have found that, and we were looking for acceleration. We have that here as well. Let's look at the second part now, part B. It says find the distance traveled by p during the first 10 seconds of its motion. अच्छा, देखें हमें initial speed भी पता है. That is 43. We know acceleration as well. Acceleration is 6. Time 10 seconds में कितना travel किया ये figure out करना है. S equals ut plus half at square. We can just use that here again. S equals ut plus half at square. Just input values, and that's going to give you 43 into 10 plus half into a, which is 6, into 10 squared. Let's see what that turns out to be. This is going to give you the displacement. 430 plus 3 into 100, that is 730. This is the distance traveled that we have here, 730 meters. So we need to be a bit quick and do this last question. There's a particle P that moves in a straight line. The velocity V at time t seconds is given by these two equations. We need to show that there is an instantaneous change in the acceleration of the particle at t equals 10. Instantaneous change का मतलब है एकदम जो है वो time equals 10 के ऊपर acceleration change हो जाती है, यानी कि first equation से आपको जो acceleration मिलती है वो different है और second equation से acceleration मिलती है वो different है. That's what you have to prove. Okay. Now, how do you do that? You have velocity equations given. The first velocity equation is 0.5 times t, and the second one is 0.25 t squared minus 8t plus 60. Velocity से acceleration पे आप कैसे जाते हैं? आप differentiate करते हैं, derivative find करते हैं, ठीक है? So that's what we do here. इसको differentiate कर लें, उससे आपके पास acceleration आ जाएगी. Acceleration equals 0.5 for part 1 from the first equation. Second equation से आपके पास acceleration क्या आती है? Let's differentiate it. That gives you 0.25 into 2, which is 0.5 times t minus 8. This is the value of acceleration. अब क्या करेंगे अब इसके अंदर time की value 10 input कर दें. देखें इस पे आपको acceleration क्या मिलती है? Acceleration equals 0.5 into 10 minus 8, and that gives me 5 minus 8, which is minus 3. Second equation से time equals 10 के ऊपर आपको minus 3 acceleration मिल रही है. So this is a negative acceleration. दोनों different है, तो बस आपने show कर दिया कि there is a change. It's going from 0.5 to minus 3. All right. Okay, so the first equation से हमें मिल रहा है कि time equals 10 पे acceleration क्या थी? 0.5, और second equation से मिल रहा है time equals 10 पे acceleration क्या है? A equals minus 3. इसका मतलब क्या है कि एकदम से आपने शायद brakes apply कर दिए हैं, इसकी वजह से वो negative हो गई, acceleration negative आ गई आपके पास, ठीक है? Let's move on. Part B of this. It says find the total distance covered by P in the interval 0 to 20. 0 to 20 में आपने total distance covered निकालना है इस particle के लिए. Now, how do we figure this out? Displacement की equations निकालेंगे और उनमें limits input कर देंगे 0 से 10 और 10 से 20. But you have to be a bit careful in problems like these. Remember, आपको देखना होता है particle की direction तो नहीं change हो रही कहीं पे. That's an important thing to consider. Particle की direction change आप कैसे figure out करते हैं? Velocity को 0 input कर देते हैं, उससे आपको पता चलता है कि acceleration, particle की direction कहीं change तो नहीं हो रही है. Let me write those two equations down here. Part 1, which is time 0 to 10 seconds, and part 2, which is time 10 to 20 seconds. We have these two equations for velocity. 0.5 t is the first one, and the second one is 0.25 t square minus 8t plus 60. ये आपके पास दूसरी इक्वेशन है. आप सबसे पहले क्या करें, देख लें कहीं पे डायरेक्शन तो चेंज नहीं हो रही इस इंटरवल के अंदर, क्योंकि फिर आपको उस पॉइंट पे भी ब्रेक करना पड़ेगा अपनी डिस्प्लेसमेंट फिगर आउट करते हुए. फर्स्ट में वेलोसिटी को 0 इनपुट करते हैं तो क्या आता है आपके पास? टाइम की वैल्यू 0 आती है, सो दैट्स नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम. 0 पे ही डायरेक्शन चेंज है, 0 10 के दरमियान में कहीं पे डायरेक्शन चेंज नहीं हो रही, सो दैट्स नॉट एन इशू. ओके, so we are fine with the first equation. Second equation में अगर आप velocity की value 0 input करते हैं, उससे देखते हैं हमें क्या मिलता है. 0 equals 0.25 t squared minus 8t plus 60. Let's solve this equation and find what values of t we get from this. T equals minus into minus 8 plus minus square root of minus 8 whole squared minus 4 into 0.25 into 60 whole divided by 0.25 multiplied by 2. ये आप सॉल्व करके देखें टी की वैल्यूज आपके पास क्या आती हैं इससे। अच्छा, let me do that. Can somebody confirm this as well in the chat box? I'm doing this on my own as well. So this turns out to be 0.25 minus 8, 60. Okay, I'm getting 20 from this and 12. Okay, so there are two values that we get from this. T equals 20 and T equals 12. अब 20 का तो मसला नहीं है बिकॉज वो तो तब तक तो आपका वो जो आपकी जर्नी खत्म ही हो गया, सो वी डोंट केयर अबाउट दैट, बट दिस इज एन इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट। T इक्वल्स 12 के ऊपर ये पार्टिकल अपनी डायरेक्शन चेंज कर रहा है, ठीक है। अब इसका मतलब है कि आपको अपनी जर्नी को इस पॉइंट पे भी ब्रेक करना पड़ेगा। तो आपके पास 3 रीजन्स बन जाएंगे। अब 0 से 10 तक फर्स्ट इक्वेशन आ गई, 10 से लेकर 12 तक सेकंड इक्वेशन से आप निकालेंगे, और फिर 12 से लेकर 20 तक अलग से निकालेंगे, ठीक है। सो वी हैव 3 डिफरेंट रीजन्स नाउ फ्रॉम फॉर टाइम। एक तो 0 से लेकर 10 तक, देन यू हैव 10 to 12 बिकॉज 12 पे आपको जर्नी को ब्रेक करना पड़ेगा, वहां पे डायरेक्शन चेंज हो रही है, एंड देन 12 to 20. What are the velocity equations? V equals 0.5 t here. दूसरे वाले में हमारे पास है 0.25 t squared. इन दोनों की इनफैक्ट सेम ही है, इनको हम इकट्ठा लिख लेते हैं 0.25 t square minus 8t plus 6t. इनको हम क्या करेंगे, इंटीग्रेट करेंगे अब, और इनमें लिमिट्स इनपुट करेंगे। फर्स्ट वाले में देखते हैं डिस्प्लेसमेंट क्या हो जाएगी, 0.5 t squared over 2. लिमिट्स क्या इनपुट करनी है यहाँ पे, कहाँ से कहाँ तक चाहिए, 0 से लेकर 10 तक। कैंसलेशन हो जाती है एंड यू गेट 0.25 फ्रॉम दिस। वैल्यूज इनपुट करके दिखाएंगे, 0.25 into 10 squared minus 0.25 into 0 squared, and this gives us 100 into 0.25 which is 25. ये आपका डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल्ड हो गया in the first part of the journey, ठीक है। डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल पूछा तो दिस इज द फर्स्ट पार्ट ऑफ द जर्नी, 25 मीटर्स। 0 से 10 तक कोई डायरेक्शन चेंज नहीं था, तो ये आपके पास 25 मीटर्स डायरेक्टली यहाँ से आ रहा होगा। Now let's look at the second and third parts of the journey. मैं इसको यहाँ पे साइड पे कर रहा हूँ, उसने आपको एडिशनल पेज पे दिया हुआ, आप नेक्स्ट पेज पे भी जाके कर सकते हैं। I'm doing this on the side here. 10 से 20 and 12 to 10 से 12 and 12 to 20. Okay, let's integrate this. That gives me 0.25 t cube over 3. In fact, let me just do a 10 to 12 here. 12 to 16 next page पे कर लेते हैं. It's going to be a lot of clutter otherwise. 0.25 t cube over 3 minus 8t squared over 2 plus 60t. ये आपके पास डिस्प्लेसमेंट आ गया। इसमें प्लस सी करने की जरूरत नहीं है बिकॉज आपको वैल्यू चाहिए फ्रॉम 10 to 12, इसमें आप लिमिट्स इनपुट कर दें 10 to 12 and see what that gives you. ये वर्किंग आपको दिखानी पड़ेगी। इसमें आप 12 इनपुट कर दें एक दफा, 0.25 into 12 cube divided by 3 minus 4 into 12 squared plus 60 into 12. Subtract from that 0.25 into 10 cube divided by 3 minus, bracket आना चाहिए यहाँ पे, subtract from this case when you input 10 there, 0.25 into 10 cube over 3 minus 4, cancellation कर लेते हैं यहाँ पे, 4 into 10 squared plus 60 into 4. ये evaluate कर लें हम बेशक कैलकुलेटर से डायरेक्टली, और आप देखें आपके पास इससे क्या आता है। 0.25 into 12 cube divided by 3 minus 4 into 12 squared plus 60 into 12. This is giving me 288 first of all. Subtract from this that second case, 0.25 into 1000 divided by 3 minus 400 plus 60 into 4. And that turns out to be minus 76.67 for me. Just confirm this. 0.25 into 10 cube, that's fine, divided by 3 minus 40 squared, so that's 4 into 100 plus 60 into 4. Okay, so I'm getting minus 230 over 3 from this. Okay, so what does this give us? 288 minus this. This is okay. I think I'm doing some error somewhere. 288 minus this. This is fine. There's some calculation error, I think, somewhere. Can somebody confirm what these values turn out to be? The 288 seems to be fine. I'm going to subtract that and just input that here again. And यहाँ पे कुछ miss कर दिया, I think. 0.25 is 14 over 3 for both brackets. Okay. Let me try that again. 0.25 into 1000 divided by 3. I think I'm going to divide by 3 miss कर दिया वहाँ पे. Minus 400 plus 60 into 4. That turns out to be fine. 60 को 4 से मैंने क्या कर दिया? Yeah. So thank you for that. Okay, so that's what happens when you try to do this in a hurry. 60 into 10. Thank you for pointing that out. मैंने यहाँ पे 10 डाल दिया. Let me correct that. If I put 10 there, that gives me 850 over 3. So yeah, so that turns out to be a positive number. That looked weird. Negative आ रहा था पहले. 850 over 3. This is what we get from the second bracket. 288 minus 850 divided by 3. This gives me 14 over 3. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Pakiza. So the final answer turns out to be 14 over 3 from this. So यहाँ पे हमारे पास याद है. Okay, good. ये हमारे पास second part की displacement आ गई, ठीक है? Let's look at the third part now. 12 to 20 seconds. उसमें भी हम क्या करेंगे? ये सेम चीज उठा लें जो आपने इंटीग्रेट कर ली है ऑलरेडी. इसमें बस आपने लिमिट चेंज करनी है. और इनफैक्ट लेट मी जस्ट कॉपी दिस फ्रॉम हियर. ये पूरा का पूरा आपने उठा के दोबारा लिखना है यहाँ पे. और लिमिट्स में इंस्टेड ऑफ यूजिंग 10 to 12 आपने इनपुट कर देना है 12 to 20. ओके, लेट्स डू दैट. 12 की जगह पे 20 डाल देते हैं और 10 की जगह पे 12 डाल देता हूँ. So we have 20 here, 20 here, 20 here, we have 12, 12 and 12. ठीक है. सेकेंड ब्रैकेट का रिजल्ट तो आपको ऑलरेडी पता है, आपने ऊपर निकाला है. दिस वाज 288. फर्स्ट का हम देख लेते हैं. 0.25 into 20 cube divided by 3 minus 4 into 20 squared plus 60 into 20. That is giving me 800 over 3. So the first bracket gives us 800 over 3, and this part gives us 25 over 27. No, I'm sorry, this is wrong. 800 मैंने divide कर दिया इसको. Minus 288. This is minus 64 over 3. अच्छा देखें, यहाँ पे नेगेटिव से फर्क नहीं पड़ता हमें. डिस्प्लेसमेंट ये लेफ्ट साइड के ऊपर है इस पॉइंट में. अगर हम राइट साइड पॉजिटिव अज्यूम करें, माइनस 64 over 3 का मतलब है कि हम लेफ्ट साइड पर जा रहे हैं. बट वी आर लुकिंग एट द डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल्ड. तो हमने इसको नेगेटिव को नहीं कंसिडर करना. हमने कहना है डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल्ड इस पॉइंट में वो तो फिर भी 64/3 होगा. That's the whole point of calculating this separately, because हमें पता है 12 के ऊपर जाके ना डायरेक्शन चेंज हो रही है. 10 to 12 वो एक साइड पे जा रहा है और 12 to 20 दूसरी साइड पे जा रहा है. तो इसको इकट्ठा नहीं कर सकते इसलिए, बिकॉज एक पार्ट में पॉजिटिव डिस्प्लेसमेंट है, दूसरे पार्ट में नेगेटिव डिस्प्लेसमेंट है. तो हमने अलग अलग करके इनको पॉजिटिव करना है पहले, फिर ऐड कर लेना है. अब इन तीनों डिस्टेंसेस को ऐड कर लें. टोटल डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल्ड हमारे पास क्या जाता है, 25 from here, then we have 14/3 from here, and then we have 64/3 from here. We add all of these values and see what we get from that. 25 plus 14/3 plus 64/3, and see what that gives us. 25 plus 78 divided by 3, that gives us 51, and that is the total distance traveled that we were looking for.